Good afternoon. Welcome back in. This is the Joe Gaither Show on Spurs Central, on the San Antonio Spurs on SI. You guys are watching us on the San Antonio Spurs on SI YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody who is doing that. Or maybe you are subscribing to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. The Joe Gaither Show on Spurs Central can be found on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. Or you might be checking us out right there on San Antonio Spurs on SI with our friend Matt Guzman. We appreciate Matt joining us each and every week, making us much, much smarter. You're reading all of his coverage at San Antonio Spurs on SI. Just type in Spurs SI in the Google machine. It'll be the first thing that pops up. You can read all of his coverage of the Spurs and the NBA and right now of the Olympics. And so that's what we're going to lead off with today. But make sure you follow him on the Twitter machine at MattGZMan on Twitter. Matt, how are you doing, my man?
Been going well. Obviously, it's been a joy to watch France tear it up in the Olympics so far. They've got a big test ahead of them, so I'm excited to kind of get into it. But it's been good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited about the end of July into August. That means we are inching closer to the NBA regular season.
Right.
But first, we've got to hit an Olympic gold medal game. And 2 episodes ago, we previewed the Olympics just a little bit, and we asked, can Team France knock off Team USA? And obviously, we said that, yes, they could. Maybe circumstances. We'll find out. Well, now here we are, one day away. On Saturday at 2:30, Team France is going to take on Team USA right there in Paris to try to win their first gold medal in men's basketball. Matt Guzman, how do we get here and what can we expect tomorrow in Paris?
Yeah, well, like you said, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, the idea that maybe France would get a chance to play for a game like this against Team USA and all of the, I guess the Avengers, as they're being called, Team America. And so, it's a big deal for France, and especially for Victor, who's, faced with this opportunity to give his team, his country, really, their first gold medal in basketball that they've had. This is a big time opportunity for him at such a young age. And, it's to answer your question, how we got here, they had 3 preliminary games. They won the first 2. They looked very strong, even though some of those, I guess, warm up games leading into the group play, they didn't even look too dominant. Questions were in the air about how good they really were. And they ended up losing to Germany, but, they made the knockout stage, and that's where it mattered, and that's where they came in clutch. Victor's had some help for sure. We were talking about some of these guys before the show. Gershon Yabusele, they've got Isaiah Cordnier, and of course Matthias Lasso. He's been, the 3 of them have been very, very instrumental in this run for France. They knocked off Canada in the quarterfinal. They knocked off, obviously, Germany. They got their revenge in that second game. That was an interesting one because Victor specifically said that they remembered the way that it felt to lose to Germany in the group play, and the way that they were laughing, the way that they were smiling, having a great grand old time. They kind of wanted to get that last laugh in there, and now they've gotten their chance to play USA after that team took down Serbia, Nikola Jokic. So it's shaping up to be an exciting matchup, to say the least. And I'm just curious as to how it's going to play out. Obviously, USA is a big favorite.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow in Paris. And as we kind of look through this, how we got here and what you're looking at tomorrow, and really myself getting to know Team France, obviously we know Victor Wembanyama covering the San Antonio Spurs, but I only see a few of these names that stand out to me as household NBA names. Obviously, Rudy Gobert, Evan Fournier, and really Nicolas Batum specifically stand out as like, okay, these guys are actually, are quality players in the NBA. These other fellas, Isaiah Cordnier and Gershon Yabusele, you've got players who I am not as familiar with. Just how remarkable is it for France to have gotten here and after putting Rudy Gobert on the bench? You bring in some of these other players to help Victor Wembanyama. Just how remarkable is it for this group to make it to the gold medal game and to maybe stay in and compete with Team USA tomorrow?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the beauty of this Olympic season. There's all sorts of different, you got the joke is that Jamal Murray, only cooks the Lakers and he plays for Canada. He plays a little bit differently. The joke is that Dennis Schroeder, when he puts on his Team Germany jersey, he just becomes a completely different animal. And it's one of those things where these players have such a different sense of pride playing for their home country versus playing in the NBA or playing overseas or wherever they might come from. And so, for this France squad, they've been one of the prime examples. Those three names that are kind of leading I would say leading the charge really are not, like you said, household NBA names. They've benched Rudy Gobert. I think he's totaled 9 minutes over the last two knockout games. And so, Vincent Collet, the coach over there, has kind of admitted that, Rudy's just not quite what they need right now. And you've got a guy like Yabusele who's playing really well. So you put him in instead. And you've got those three guys, Cordonier and Loiseau, who are kind of taking that sense of pride that they feel from being on Team France, and they're really letting it show. Every time that they score, every time that they win, you can see just how much emotion goes into these games. And so, to answer your question, it really is. It's been a remarkable run for them, considering they weren't really considered a team that might be able to make it this far, because, you had you had Gobert and you had Victor together, and that was kind of supposed to be the centerpiece of this squad. And, here we are 2 weeks later, and one of them is on the bench permanently, it seems. And yet they're still here with that chance to contend for gold. So it's just, I think it goes back to that, there's a different feeling, the Olympics and playing for your home country, whether it's here or even last summer at the FIBA World Cup. These are where some of these players get to shine, whether they're NBA players looking to kind of have a breakout season and get their name in the mix. I would argue that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's MVP case began last summer at the FIBA World Cup. So it's times like these where these players kind of get their chance to stand out. And if they're not in the NBA, this is where they make their name known. You've got people who are saying that Yabusele should be picked up by an NBA team, people saying that Loiseau should join the Spurs to be with Victor. And so, it's interesting, but I think they've really proven, you don't necessarily have to have all the stars to get to this point. Team USA and France are in very different situations, yet here they are to face each other.
All right, and so let's take it right home to our man, Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, he will play in more Olympics than just this year, than just this edition here in France. But to win Team France's first gold medal and have it be right there in Paris, what would it mean for him to pull off the upset tomorrow?
Oh, it'd mean everything for him. You can just see, and one of my favorite quotes that he's had this run, he got a cut on his neck during the last game against Germany, and they asked him about it. They said, you're bleeding, talk us through that injury and what you're thinking. And he said, well, in the France national anthem, we talk about blood and, leaving it all out there. And he says, so he literally said, he's like, if me getting cut or if me bleeding or if me getting hurt, if that leads us to a gold medal, then take it all. I'm offering, and that's just a guy, and we've seen it from the second that he stepped foot in San Antonio. He's got heart. He plays, with a passion for the game, for sure. He's not the guy that's going to go showboating around, but you can see when he gets excited. I remember at the end of the season, he had that photo that's been used everywhere where he just slammed the ball against the court and it shot, 20, 30 feet in the air. And so this is a guy that just has all the passion in the world. And so to not only get a chance to play the game that he loves, but to do it for his home country and potentially secure a medal at a time where they've never had a medal before, that's just going to mean everything to him. And to get a chance to kind of play in front of his home fans on a stage this big, this is uncharted territory for him, uncharted territory for the team. So I can only imagine, the kind of preparation and what he's kind of feeling, at the thought of just having this opportunity.
All right, Saturday at 2:30, you're going to be able to follow the coverage of the gold medal game right there on our family of networks, Spurs Central, the San Antonio Spurs on SI. Let's pin you down, Matt Guzman, 16.5-point favorite. Team USA was taken to the wire by Serbia. Thank you, Steph Curry, for saving USA's bacon. USA, a 16.5-point favorite against France. They are minus 2,000 on the money line. So that's a very, very heavy favorite. Will France be celebrating their first gold medal, or will Team USA win again?
I really do think it's going to come down to it. I don't think that USA is going to run away with it the way that they might be expected to. Because all Olympics, they've proven, even against South Sudan in the warm-up games, they've proven that, they're not invincible as they may seem. And so I believe that, the way that France has been playing, they're going to put up a show and put up a fight. But at the end of the day, that's still a very young squad when you think about it. You got Batum and Gobert, who are very old, but Gobert's not playing, and Batum isn't exactly the star that's carrying the show right now. I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, it might be close, but I don't see France, making that final push and getting over the hump. But nevertheless, earning a silver at this stage, especially having your only loss be to USA at this was kind of viewed as their season, the redeem team. It was kind of viewed as the year for them to go and win gold. And if they didn't, there would just be all hell would break loose. And so, it's not necessarily the worst thing to have your loss be to that squad. I do think they're going to put up a fight. They're definitely not going to get embarrassed. I'm just not so sure that they can pull it all the way off because no other team has so far.
All right, well, I'll just step out on a limb and I'll say that France wins. How about that? We'll take Team France just for the fun of it. Put one of us on one side and one on the other. Probably gonna end up looking bad there, but we'll see what happens tomorrow at 2:30. You want to circle back to last week's conversation because there's a little bit of news around NBA and Christmas Day, and that was our conversation last week. So let's head back and follow up as the NBA has put out its 2024 Christmas Day schedule, and both of us were wrong. Both of us said that the Spurs should not be playing on Christmas Day and probably would not be playing on Christmas Day.
Right.
But Matt Guzman, that ended up being incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I was surprised on when I was at dinner when I saw it come onto my phone. I said, like, the fact that they got it, and then I get a text from a couple of my friends who are Thunder fans, very upset at the fact that the Spurs kind of jumped them in the order, it seems. And so I'll have a piece coming on this, tonight. But to me, it says a lot about what the league is thinking and kind of where their priorities sit. We've long known that, it's obviously a money-making business. This is they're going to want to put their most marketable stars in the front and center. They're going to want to give them the biggest games. They're going to want to put them on T-shirts and sell their jerseys. And so there's no doubt about it that Victor is inching toward the top of that list and most likely will top that list for years to come as he continues to develop. So the fact that he's already gotten his Christmas Day game after the Spurs went 22-60 for the second straight season says a lot about what the NBA kind of feels about that, because, it's one of those things where the Thunder were the number one seed in the West, and, they got jumped in the order. The Bucks, who have Giannis Antetokounmpo, were taken out of the lineup for the Spurs. And so it's one of those things where the NBA is kind of showing a little bit of their colors here. I believe it's them saying a message that maybe Victor is more marketable, more exciting than Giannis is right now. And maybe Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves are more exciting than what the Thunder have going on. Like we said, we talked about it last week. The numbers say they shouldn't have played on Christmas this year, but I'm curious your thoughts as to, why they ended up getting that draw.
Well, I mean, the Spurs are, despite the lack of success over the last couple of years, the Spurs are, over the last 2 decades, really one of the most successful franchises out there. And so often, a good bet to have that bounce back, to have that resurgence. It's a little bit of a cyclical nature there. Obviously, I guess you probably you haven't seen such a bad season that they had the last 2 years. Really, while I was growing up, but you've always had the Spurs bouncing back and coming back and being relevant in the league, and so maybe it's them trying to stay in front. If the Spurs are any good with Stephon Castle, Chris Paul, like we talked about it on maybe last week's episode or the episode before, that we expect the Spurs to be in that kind of play-in game territory this year, and if they are in that play-in game territory, well, you've got a really loyal fan base, and kind of, I mean, yeah, it's obviously focused there in San Antonio and in Texas, but the Spurs are pretty lovable, coast to coast. There's not really anybody that has, we hate the Spurs. You have big time polarizing feelings about the Celtics and Lakers. We love the Celtics, we hate the Celtics, whatever you feel. The Spurs don't elicit, in my opinion, that kind of emotional reaction. I think most people like the Spurs. I was surprised that when you pointed out them passing the Thunder, that is really surprising to me because of their youth and their success, and really what they have put into this rebuild. It's been a long process for them, but and it seems like they have it right, and so maybe it is a surprise to have the Spurs jump them. No, not as much of a surprise to have them jump the Bucks, because I'm with you. I think that Wembanyama is more marketable than Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I think that the Bucks are maybe on the back end. The sun is definitely setting on their run to the top, unless they make some wholesale changes. Obviously, they tried to with Damian Lillard, but that didn't work out the way they wanted to. I think losing Drew Holiday to a huge rival probably was a bigger factor than bringing in Damian Lillard. So yeah, it makes sense for them to be jumping the Bucks, in my opinion. I think that it's really the NBA trying to get in front of what will be a popular trend, because Wembanyama, 20 years old, 21 years old, he's going to be one of your top 5 players in the league.
Sure.
Very soon, very, very soon. And if he's flirting with that top 5 player in the league this season, then to have him on Christmas Day, I mean, look, the casual NBA fan, obviously the season starts early November, but for the casual NBA fan who's watching the NFL and who's watching college football through their Thursday through Monday window, they're not paying attention to the NBA until Christmas Day. A lot of, like, what was it, the COVID year where the season started on Christmas Day?
Right. Yeah.
That was a perfect time to really fire up. This is opening day. Now, obviously, it doesn't work for the money and the schedule, and maybe you push the season back. I mean, in an ideal world, but if I were in charge, you make Christmas Day opening day. And so for the Spurs to be in that Christmas Day lineup, I think it says a lot of about how the league is viewing what the Spurs are doing in their front office and building around Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, it would be we joked last week about adding Cooper Flag, tanking another year and adding Cooper Flag. I don't think that that's in the cards for them, but sure. I do think that there is more talent to be had or to be added, maybe not right now, but to be added to the Spurs roster over the next 18 months. And if you put them on Christmas Day right here, they're playing another a very polarizing franchise that is an up-and-comer. That's going to be a good game. Yeah. I mean, you're going to watch them play the Knicks, that first game right there after all the presents have been opened, and it's going to be a good game to kind of see two franchises going back and forth. You got iconic brands to start it off, but it's also maybe a little bit of a setup on the NBA's portion to, okay, New York Knicks, we got to put you up against a good brand with a good face. Well, everybody knows Chris Paul, Victor Wembanyama, everybody knows Greg Popovich. If you guys can look good on Christmas Day, what would that do for the league? Obviously, I'm not suggesting that they set up the Spurs as a sacrificial lamb, but does it work a little bit? If the Knicks are good, it's only making the NBA a lot of money. So I wonder if there was a little bit of that at play. Let's put up our most pop. I mean, look, they could have put up the Pelicans and Zion Williamson, but it'd be maybe a more shoe-in of a win to put in the Spurs, and you still have a little bit of star power there with Chris Paul, Wembanyama, and Greg Popovich. So maybe there was a little bit of that at play.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see that, and that's the interesting part is that there's been so many changes for the Spurs over the offseason between Stephon Castle and adding somebody like Chris Paul. We don't really know what they're going to look like because on top of everything else, Victor, I think I've mentioned this in the past, Victor is not going to have to get used to and learn his get his bearings straight and kind of figure out how to play in the NBA again. He's already figured that out. Yeah. And so he's, in the ideal world and what they're hoping for, he's going to hit the ground running from day one, and he's going to look kind of the way that he looked at the end of the season, if not better. And so we're not even sure, because obviously the Spurs were having struggles right away. They went 2-1 and they beat the Suns back to back, and everyone thought they were going to be great. And then they just fell off. And so, we could be in this position where they start the season and they're 17-6, or they go on this crazy run where they just get hot. And so, it could be, like you said, it could be one of those like, all right, Knicks, like we give you a home game on Christmas. You're at the Garden like normal. Here's a team, take care of business, do your thing. but at the same time, the Spurs could be in that position where they are competing and they do put up a good game. Hell, they could even win. If they beat the Knicks on Madison Square Garden, obviously the NBA might be a little, like we mentioned, might be a little upset that their team lost, but the upside was they probably got a 20-point, 30-point multi-block performance from Victor Wembanyama, one of the league's up-and-coming stars, and it justifies the fact that they put him on Christmas.
1,000%.
If you're the NBA, it's a win-win, because if the Knicks win, it's like, yeah, well, the Knicks are the Knicks, and we put them on Christmas. If the Spurs win, it's like, well, our guy, our face of the league that's going to be, around for years to come, just, gave you a show. And he proved why he's going to be up and coming and why we put him on Christmas. So, I see both ways. I see both sides. But yeah, I mean, it's always exciting. Like you said, my dad's the same way. He's not as into the NBA as obviously as I am. And so he likes to say that they should start on Christmas, because that's kind of the ideal time to start tuning in and start figuring out where teams stand. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a good game. Like you said, I think it's a great starting point for Victor. And I mentioned this yesterday. My initial reaction was that, if Victor continues to develop and the Spurs continue to get better as they're expected to, this is likely to be the first Christmas game of a slew of them, and if they continue to get better, there's no reason they won't continue to be on Christmas.
The Spurs lost 126-105 last November up in New York. That was the last time they were up at Madison Square Garden. But they beat the Knicks in March 130-126 in overtime behind a 40-point, 20-rebound, 7-assist game from Victor Wembanyama. So that would be an incredible night for the Spurs, and we'll see if they can get it done. What do you think about the rest of this lineup as we kind of close on out of here? What do you think of the rest of this Christmas Day lineup? You've got Spurs Knicks will lead you off. We're going Timberwolves at Mavericks. We're going 76ers at Celtics. We're going Lakers at Warriors, and Nuggets at Suns.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's one of those things where, they you can tell where they kind of got their rationale from in making these matchups. LeBron versus Steph Curry is long been, ever since they had that, that duel in the play-in tournament a couple of seasons ago. Almost every single game between LeBron and Curry has been, a must-watch. And so they put that right at the prime time, right when you're eating dinner and sitting around with family. That'll be the one that you turn on and kind of cap the night off with, or not cap the night off with, but a lot of times you don't pay attention to that final one nearly as much. They put that one right at the heart of the order.
I'm asleep. My Christmas turkey, my Christmas ham.
That's right. Now the Sixers at Celtics, obviously they just added Paul George, and they'll be making the trip up to TD Garden, not Madison Square, but the other one, to a team that has just won the NBA Finals. And so, obviously curious to see how Embiid plays, because he's had his run with Team USA this season. He's likely to have a lot of attention on him now that he has another star to try and make it past the second round that they've struggled to get past. So that'll be a good matchup to watch. I love the Timberwolves and the Mavs. The Mavs have something to prove this season. They have to prove that last season was not a fluke. They have to prove that they are, in fact, a very good team. They're contenders with Kyrie and Luka. And so to bring in a team that just knocked off the Nuggets and supposedly is supposed to get hotter this upcoming season, I think it's a great matchup. And obviously you can't exclude Jokic, you can't exclude Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. You got all sorts of stars in that last game just to kind of cap it off. I do like the slate. I think it's very star-studded. I think it makes sense. And honestly, I do think the Spurs matchup at the Knicks is the most surprising one. The rest of them really do make sense.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. The season will be here before we know it. Make sure you follow Matt Guzman at MattGZMan on the Twitter machine. Make sure you're following all his great work at SAS on SI on the Twitter machine. Follow them at San Antonio Spurs on SI. Put it right in your Google machine, Spurs SI, and it'll pop right up. Matt, thanks so much for your time this week.
Thanks, Joe. Great to have you.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for our episode. We thank everybody who watched us on the Spurs on SI YouTube channel or listened to us, the Joe Gaither Show on Spurs Central on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Amazon. We hope you enjoyed tomorrow's gold medal game, and we'll be back next week to cap it off, find out how if Victor Wembanyama made himself a hero for Team France right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Spurs Central, the San Antonio Spurs on SI.